I didn't answer my son's last phone call. That's how I'll start. No easing into it, no soft introduction. I let it ring. I looked at his name on that little screen, and I let it ring until it stopped. I told myself I'd call him back later. There wasn't a later. He died 3 hours after that call. And I've been living inside those 3 hours for the last 9 years. I'm 84 years old now. My name's Harold Whitaker. Most folks call me Hal. I live alone in a small brick house outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. Same house my wife and I bought in 1972 when interest rates were climbing and we were scared but hopeful. But that house feels different now. It don't feel like a home anymore. It feels like an echo. You ever sit in a quiet house and hear nothing but your own breathing? It's loud, louder than you'd think. The refrigerator hums like it's whispering. The floorboards creak like they're remembering footsteps that ain't coming back. I had 2 children, a daughter, Michelle, and a son, Daniel. This story's about Daniel, but it's also about me and the kind of man I was. The kind of man I thought I had to be. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't abusive. I didn't drink too much. I worked hard, provided, paid the bills on time, showed up to ball games when I could, fixed what broke, mowed the lawn every Saturday at 7:30 sharp like clockwork. I thought that was enough. A lot of men my age thought that was enough. We were raised to believe love was a roof over someone's head, food on the table, shoes that fit. We weren't taught how to say, "I'm proud of you," unless there was a trophy involved. Daniel was born in the winter of '76. Snow piled up against the hospital windows the night he came into the world. I remember holding him and thinking, this boy's going to be tough. He's going to be strong. I had plans for him before he could even sit up. Baseball, maybe engineering, something steady, something respectable. He was a quiet child, soft-spoken, sensitive in ways I didn't understand. He liked drawing, would sit at the kitchen table with crayons and sketch the dog, the trees, his mama's hands. He had this way of noticing small things, the curve of a leaf, the shadow on the wall, the way light hit the coffee cup in the morning. I used to tell him, "That's nice, son, but don't forget to play outside. Toughen up a little." I thought I was helping him. Tell me honestly, how many parents think they're shaping strength when they're actually shaping silence? When Daniel was 13, he told me he didn't want to try out for the football team. I remember the kitchen light that night, yellow, buzzing faintly. His mother was washing dishes. I was reading the paper. He said it gently. "Dad, I don't think football's for me." I folded the paper slow, looked at him over my glasses. "What do you mean it ain't for you?" He shrugged. I don't like getting hit." I laughed. Not kindly. Nobody likes getting hit. That's the point. Builds character. He didn't argue. He just nodded, and that's what he always did. He nodded. I mistook his quiet for agreement. But now I know sometimes a child goes quiet not because he agrees, but because he's learning it's safer not to disagree. Years went by like that. Small dismissals, little corrections. Me pushing him toward the shape I thought a man should be. When he was 16, he showed me a sketchbook he'd been hiding in his closet, filled with charcoal drawings, portraits so detailed they scared me a little. There was one of me sitting at the dinner table. I didn't know he'd ever noticed how tired I looked, the lines on my forehead, the slump in my shoulders. He saw me more clearly than I ever saw him. He said, "I'm thinking maybe I could study art after high school." I didn't yell. I didn't have to. I just said, "Art ain't gonna feed a family." And I closed the book. You ever close something that ain't just paper? You ever close a door and not realize it locks from the outside? He stopped showing me his drawings after that, but I'd find little scraps sometimes, torn corners in the trash, half-finished sketches tucked inside textbooks. He didn't stop drawing. He just stopped sharing. He went to a state college, majored in business, safe, practical. I told everyone how proud I was, but he started coming home less. He'd sit at the table quiet, checking his phone, counting the minutes, laughing softer than he used to. His mother saw it before I did. Mothers usually do. She told me once, "Hal, you're losing him." I said, "He's just growing up." But growing up don't look like that. Growing up don't look like distance measured in miles and silence. When Daniel was 26, he told us he was moving to Seattle, said he'd been offered a job at a small design firm, graphic design, not business. He'd switched majors senior year without telling me. I felt betrayed. That's the word I used, betrayed, as if his life belonged to me. We argued in the driveway. I can still see the sunlight on his windshield, still hear my own voice, sharp and cold. You're throwing away everything for some childish dream. He looked at me, and for the first time in his life, he didn't nod. He said, "It's not childish, it's mine." That sentence hit me like a slap. It's mine. I realized years later that was the first time he'd ever claimed his life out loud. He left 2 days later. We spoke, but it wasn't the same. Birthdays, holidays, short calls, polite. He met a woman out there, Elena, kind voice, steady laugh. I could hear warmth in the background when she picked up the phone. I never made much effort with her. If I'm being honest, I thought she was part of the reason he'd changed. Truth was, he'd changed long before. He'd grown into himself, just not into the version I approved of. When my wife, Carol, got sick with pancreatic cancer, Daniel flew home immediately. He stayed for weeks, slept on the couch, cooked dinner, drove her to appointments, sat by her bed and read poetry to her when she couldn't sleep. I'd stand in the doorway sometimes and watch him hold her hand, gentle, patient, present. He drew her portrait while she slept, gave it to me after she passed. It hangs in my hallway now. I can't walk past it without feeling both pride and something like shame. Because in her last days, she whispered something to me I didn't understand then. Hal, love him softer. After Carol died, the house got heavy. Daniel called more often at first, tried to check on me. But I was grieving in my own hard way, closed off, irritable, quick to change the subject when feelings came up. He invited me to Seattle. "Come stay a while, Dad." I said, "I'm fine." I wasn't. I ate dinner in front of the television most nights, fell asleep in my chair, woke up to silence. But pride's a stubborn companion. It sits with you when no one else does. We had one big fight 2 years later. It was about politics of all things, something small, something forgettable. I said something dismissive about his generation, about how they were soft, how they didn't understand sacrifice. He went quiet. Then he said, "Dad, you've been disappointed in me since I was 13. I'm tired of trying to earn something you don't even know how to give." That cut deep. Instead of listening, I doubled down. Told him he was being dramatic. We didn't speak for almost 8 months after that. 8 months. You think that's nothing when you're younger. You think, we'll fix it at Christmas. You think there's always time. One afternoon in April, my phone rang. Daniel. I was in the garage, oil-stained rag in my hand, the baseball game playing on a small radio. I stared at his name on the screen. My chest tightened. I knew we hadn't resolved things. I knew that call meant something. And I thought, not right now. I don't want another argument. So I let it ring. It went to voicemail. He left a message. His voice sounded softer than usual. "Hey, Dad, just wanted to check in. I know things been tense. I don't like it that way. Call me back when you can. Love you. Love you." I replayed that voicemail twice that evening. Still didn't call. I told myself I'd do it in the morning when I'd had time to think, when I'd figured out what to say, as if love needs a script. That night, around 11:30, I got another call. Not from him, from Elena. Car accident, rain-slick highway, a semi that didn't stop in time. They tried. He was gone before they reached the hospital. I remember dropping the phone. I remember sliding down the kitchen cabinet onto the floor. I remember saying, "No, no, no," like if I said it enough times it would reverse something. At the funeral in Seattle, people told stories about him, about how he'd volunteer teaching art to underprivileged kids, about how he'd stay late to help co-workers meet deadlines, about how he'd sit with friends during breakups, during hard seasons, about how he believed in people, and about how he'd talk about his dad. Elena handed me something after the service, a sketchbook, his recent work. The last page was dated 2 days before he died. It was a drawing of an old man standing in a doorway, light behind him, shadow in front. Under it, he'd written, "I hope he sees me one day." I couldn't breathe when I read that. I had seen him. I just refused to look long enough. Now I sit in this quiet house, 84 years old, and I replay moments like films I can't turn off. The football tryouts, the sketchbook, the driveway argument, that phone ringing in the garage. You ever think about how small choices become permanent ones? I used to think being a good father meant shaping your child into something strong. Now I think it means protecting who they already are. I confused control with guidance. I confused pride with principle, and I confused silence with strength. The hardest part ain't the accident. It's knowing the last thing between us wasn't peace, it was distance. And that distance was built brick by brick, mostly by me. And if you're listening and you've got a son or daughter you're disappointed in, ask yourself something. Are you disappointed because they're failing, or because they're not becoming what you imagined? There's a difference. I'd give anything to sit across from Daniel at this kitchen table one more time. I wouldn't lecture. I wouldn't correct. I'd ask him about his latest design. I'd ask him what he sees when he looks at the world. I'd tell him I was wrong. Not in a grand speech, just simple. I was wrong, son. You think you'll have time to say those words. You think there'll be another Sunday dinner. Another call, another chance to soften. But time don't negotiate. It don't care about your pride. I visit his grave once a year. I can't do more than that. The guilt gets heavy. I sit there and talk to him sometimes. Tell him about the weather, about Michelle's kids, about how I finally hung his artwork in the living room instead of the hallway. I tell him I see him now. I just wish I'd said it when he could hear me. So, here's my advice, from an old man who learned too late. Don't make your love conditional on performance. Don't measure your children by your unfinished dreams. Don't let ego rob you of tenderness. And if your phone rings with a name you've been avoiding, answer it, even if your voice shakes, even if you don't know what to say. Say something. Silence is heavier than any argument. I don't need sympathy. I had my chance. You still might have yours. Don't wait until the house is quiet. Don't wait until you're 84 and talking to photographs. Call them. Listen. And if you've closed a door, open it while there's still someone on the other side.